every day. And we as I got to know him better, we had quite a few political conversations. I'll never forget, he said to me once, he said, if I knew all the money from my fags was going directly to the NHS, he said, I'd smoke twice as much, James.
Well, there we go. That seems to make a lot of sense to me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It sounded bonkers, but there is some sense in it, believe it or not. Thank you, Daniel. 11:30 is the time. Holly Harris is here with the headlines. I've got it now. Yes, it is. Heroin is far and away the worst on the drug harm index, followed by cocaine. And this is, what's the word I want? This is done in a way that doesn't reflect what's used most. So it's a sort of average harm, as opposed to societal harm, which is obviously going to be much higher according to uptake. So alcohol is going to cause a heck of a lot more problems because millions and millions of people drink it than heroin, because far fewer people take it. But if you were to sort of remove the popularity element from the measuring, then heroin is far and away the worst, followed by cocaine, street methadone and barbiturates almost in sort of joint third place. And then you've got tobacco, alcohol, amphetamines, ketamine, benzoidazepines and buprenorphine. Don't ask me, mate. And then oddly, definitely legal because they come in lower than tobacco and alcohol. You'd have cannabis ecstasy, CAT, GHB, anabolic steroids, solvents. I don't know. Well, anyway, Daniel was an educator, wasn't he? Definitely. 11:34 is the time. Adam's on the Isle of Wight. Adam, what do you want to say?
Well, it's an interesting one. I'm one of those smokers that regret starting.
Yes.
But I can tell you now, a law wouldn't have changed that for me. I started when I was about 13, 14. I used to hang around outside a shop, wait for somebody who looked a bit dodgy to come along and give them it was about £6 back then, to buy a pack of 20, and off they went for it. Raising the age. Don't get me wrong, I think something needs to be done, but I don't think that's the answer.
Well, it might be. I mean, it's. I mean, they're never going to do 100%. I think the New Zealand model, which this tracks against, sees reductions of approximately 30% whenever they do that increase by age. So we don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I'd rather see it reduced by 30% than 0%, even if we can't do it by 100%, which is kind of what underpins your argument.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, I wanted to reference the conversation that I've had about free choice as well.
Yes.
And like I say, I've been smoking for 10 years. I'm fully aware of the risks. I've tried to give up, and it's just not happened yet. No. It's on the list. But, I think free choice, especially in society, is a big thing. It's something we should have. But we've also got to control how free choice is spent. The way I look at it is like this. You've got a big pizza, right?
Go on, I'm going to like this.
Free choice. You can cut that pizza up however you like.
Right.
Okay? If you cut it in a normal fashion, in bits of 8, everyone gets a fair slice. You can still choose which bit of the pizza, whether it's the bit with the sweet corn on or the bit with the chicken on.
Yeah.
If you cut a big triangle in the middle, suddenly, yes, you've had your free choice. Doesn't matter if it's the same size triangle, but everyone else now is screwed. And I look at it a bit way like smoking. I can choose to smoke. I pay the taxes for the fags that I buy, etc. I pay my normal taxes. However, I know full well if I carry on, I'm going to be a bigger drain on the house service, on things like that with the conditions that I get, that I can put myself through.
Yeah.
So, in some respects, free choice.
I'm just checking Theo's face on this one because I want to make sure it's not just me. I'm still trying to work out the pizza.
It's a bit like, look, everyone has the same slice of the pie.
No,
right?
I can't. I think
your slice in the middle.
Right. Yeah, but then what happens if you get hit by a bus? Does your family get a payout on the money that you would have been? Do they get a refund on all the tax that you've paid as a smoker in expectation of needing more support from the NHS?
Well, there's that. There is that, I suppose. Yeah, but you could.
And how does that play into? Is that an anchovy?
At that point, though, you need to start taxing people who are doing extreme sports and all, don't you? In the bid to get fit,
that's the. I hate the phrase slippery road, but also, I don't know. Let's imagine I could afford to carry on enjoying a nice glass of Sauvignon Blanc of an evening, and the fellow over the road couldn't afford. If we were going to do it using taxation, that doesn't feel right, does it?
No, I mean, this is the problem, as I think we've all discovered.
I think we're all a little bit frightened of admitting that it's all nonsense, except possibly Daniel's analysis on the drug harm index. But even then, it's still arbitrary. You're just deciding that these drugs are too dangerous and these... Well, it's not arbitrary. Well, it is... Well, I don't know. I'm still confused by the pizza. Adam, thank you. 11:38 is the time. I mentioned that Theo Usherwood had shuffled into the studio. To what do we owe this? Oh, shall I read you a letter?
Oh, yeah.
It's nice, this. Have you got to get the thing ready, Keith? It's a lovely letter. It's off Rob, who's in Edinburgh. He goes, Dear James, I've done something I have not done for years the other evening. It's all right, it's not that. I watched a Western on telly. The film was called Fort Apache and was very good. However, what really baffled me about it was that several times during the film, the cavalry bugler tried to summon the Usherwood. I don't think that Theo was even alive at that time. How very strange. That's best regards, Bob, who obviously heard this quite a lot in the film that he was watching. I like that.
Do we know the film?
Fort Apache?
Fort Apache, I've never watched it.
Probably John Wayne, is it? Or someone like that.
I'll look it up.
Anyway, where are we?
To bring you up to date with what's going on in the House of Commons, because you'll remember that it emerged earlier this week that the government, as it is formulating its new legislation when it comes to ripping up the Northern Ireland Protocol, basically taking out any checks on goods travelling from Great Britain into Northern Ireland, that we would expect them to consult, and they did consult Sir James Eadie, who is the foremost senior barrister within the government, but he wasn't asked to actually give an opinion for the Prime Minister or the Foreign Secretary.
And why might that be?
As to whether the legislation would break international
So you've got a lawyer on the payroll.
Yes.
You're about to do something that might be illegal. Why on earth wouldn't you check with the lawyer?
Well, they consulted the lawyer.
Oh, okay.
So the lawyer was aware that this legislation was being drafted, but he then wasn't asked to give an opinion as to whether it would break international law, from what we understand.
Right. Why would they not want to know whether it was going to break international law officially from their own lawyer?
The assumption would be that would.
Well, let's do what Sherlock Holmes would do. Do you want to be Holmes or Watson?
Watson.
Okay. Watson, we shall eliminate the impossible, and whatever we are left with, however improbable, must be the truth.
So shall we start on that basis with Alistair Carmichael?
Yes, please, John.
With
John Watson.
John Watson. Yes, please, John.
Yeah,
okay,
please,
let's start
John.
with Alistair Carmichael.
We have learned in subsequent media reports that while Sir James was consulted on aspects of the proposals, he was, in fact, asked not to give an opinion on whether the plan would breach international law, and was told to assume that there was a respectable legal basis for the government's position. Can the Minister confirm to the House that this information in the public domain is correct?
Now, that was Alistair Carmichael for the Liberal Democrats. So James Cleverly from the Foreign Office, the junior minister in the Foreign Office,
That's always good,
James
isn't it?
Cleverly,
Here we go.
was dispatched to the Commons to provide an answer. Now, there are two possibilities, James. He said that actually it would break, this is option one, that it would break international law, and that actually the government was ploughing ahead anyway, but didn't want to get that advice from Sir James Eadie, which is, of course, what you were suggesting. Option two, which is there shouldn't have been a leak, and we wouldn't talk about legal advice anyway. Which one did he go for?
Well, I mean, it's James Cleverly, so he'll go for option two.
Option two.
Mr. Speaker, the Government is confident that our actions are lawful under international law and in line with long-standing convention. We do not set out internal legal deliberation.
So it's option two, yes.
They're confident. But the same government said they were perfectly comfortable breaking international law in a very limited and specific way.
Well, this government isn't going to be breaking international law. You heard it there from James Cleverly.
But he won't admit or reveal whether or not the leak, what's been revealed in the leak, is true or not.
He just wouldn't comment.
So what you've got here is...
But he didn't deny what Alistair Carmichael said, did he?
No. Let's listen to what Alistair Carmichael said again, because, this is Sherlock and Watson here.
We have learned in subsequent media reports that while Sir James was consulted on aspects of the proposals, he was, in fact, asked not to give an opinion on whether the plan would breach international law, and was told to assume that there was a respectable legal basis for the government's position. Can the Minister confirm to the House that this information in the public domain is correct?
So that's Alistair Carmichael.
Got it.
He's saying, I acknowledge Sir James Eadie was consulted, but he wasn't asked for an opinion.
So
is that right or wrong?
Whence, which is the sort of word Sherlock Holmes would use, whence does James Cleverly derive his confidence that international law isn't going to be broken by what they have planned?
Just because it's James.
Just because he says so. So by not asking James Eadie...
Well, the government, to be fair to the government, they have said that they've consulted a wide range of public
but
legal
they won't
opinion.
tell us who.
No.
And the most obvious person to consult
Well,
was
the most
not,
senior person. No, they consulted.
was not consulted on this specific question.
He was not asked to give an opinion. So it's a bit like saying, here's the evidence.
Yes.
Have a look at it.
Thank you.
Have you looked at it?
Oh, yes, very interesting. Well,
Now,
I'm
have you come
afraid
to a
I've got-
judgment? No, I don't want to know.
But I've got some very bad news.
No, I don't want to know.
But this is clearly and
No.
blatantly...
I'm not asking
But
for
it's an open
don't
and
give
shut-
your opinion. Thank
Oh,
you. I've consulted
okay,
you. You can
sorry.
have it back.
Yeah, okay,
Thanks.
yes, there you are. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Cleverly. Right.
Thank you.
Okay, and
So
I've now been consulted.
You've been consulted,
Ah, I see.
but you haven't given an opinion
But you're confident it's not breaking the law?
because I've consulted Keith.
Well, hang on, leave Keith out of things. He's just picked up 200 followers on Twitter. He's got to greet them all
No,
individually.
I've consulted somebody else, but you are the most prominent.
But you can't
legal
tell me.
advice.
No, you've gone too far because you've named Keith. They won't name Keith. James Cleverly hasn't named Keith, or indeed anybody else.
No, but I'm just okay.
No, that's
Okay, well,
important.
okay, well,
It's important
okay.
because you know what I would do? I'd phone Keith. And I can't
Yes.
phone Keith because I
You
don't know
even
who's
know
told
Keith
James
exists.
Cleverly that it's legal.
Schrodinger's Keith.
Schrodinger's Keith?
So anyway, Tobias Ellwood,
Oh, yes.
because of course he's a Conservative MP who suggested that the government might want to rejoin the single market
Yes.
in order to avoid the cost of living crisis.
Well,
So you
and,
could
and
broadly
indeed, I mean, he's
describe-
taken a lot of abuse for that. But Daniel Hannan also wrote an article this week saying we never should have left the single market in the first place. That's Daniel Hannan, who was put into the House of Lords for his support of a project that saw us leave the single market.
So Tobias Ellwood raised the point that what happens if we consult the United States and, of course, Joe Biden in the White House, and they were to come to stick with their view that the Northern Ireland peace process must not be a casualty of Brexit, of course, as Joe Biden has made very clear previously. What happens if the Americans come to the view that actually the British mustn't rip up international law?
Could I ask if there are any changes to the Northern Ireland Protocol? They do come with America's blessing. After all, they are a guarantor to the Good Friday Agreement.
Mr. Speaker, the actions that we take, we are taking in a way that keeps our good friends internationally informed of both what we are doing and why we are doing it.
So will
for
you be making sure that the guarantor of the Good Friday Agreement is comfortable and happy with what you are doing, and then James Cleverly just does some words?
So James Cleverly came
we'll
back
tell
and
them. We'll tell
we're going
them.
to keep them informed.
Yes, we'll tell them what we're doing. We'll tell them what we're doing.
But what he didn't say is that if America or the
The
White
guarantor,
House,
a guarantor of the Good Friday
were to
Agreement.
be distinctly unhappy with the decision to press ahead with this piece of legislation, that the whole thing would collapse in a
So
long mess.
if I was about to blow up the studio,
Yeah, go on.
and you said, "Are you going to blow up the studio?"
No, you'd keep me informed that you're
I'd
going to
just
blow the
keep you
studio.
informed.
Yeah.
Well, I did tell you.
But okay, you kept me informed.
I told you.
Yes,
What are you complaining
but-
about? I told you I was blowing up the studio, and
but-
it's your job to make sure the studio doesn't get blown up. I should add that you're the guarantor of studio safety.
Yes, I'm.
So
what's
are you
the-
going
what's
to
the-
your plans for the studio? Are you going to run them by the guarantor for studio safety?
But if
and I say I am going to keep them informed,
yeah, so you've kept me informed.
and there goes the studio.
No,
What?
because what you'd have to remember is that if you were to talk about the power dynamic between the United States and the United Kingdom,
Ah, yes.
that actually the United States is significantly bigger and carries a huge amount more clout.
Well, you say that.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, you say that America is
I mean-
bigger and more powerful than Brexit Britain, but that is, I think you'll find, just an opinion. In much the same way that cheers can be boos and that humiliating setbacks can be glorious victories, so one could argue that Brexit Britain is much, 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 much more powerful than little old America.
But the American economy is multiple times the size of the British economy.
Ah, yes, but you don't get to be Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport by actually counting things, Theo Usherwood.
Can I look it up?
Yeah.
Should we look it up?
Yeah, but
I'll
that's
look it up and I'll
you can prove anything with facts.
I'll look it up. It'll take a second. I just want to find out how much bigger it is.
It's 11:47. It's 11:51. Theo, you're looking a bit flustered there. I mean, I suggested to you that it wouldn't be very easy to prove that America was bigger and more powerful than the UK,
Stop
just
it.
as it was hard to prove that Boris Johnson was booed at St Paul's the other day, as opposed to cheered to the rafters, or indeed that suffering a worse setback than any serving Conservative leader I think has ever suffered in a vote of confidence was actually a resounding victory that proves all his detractors should go away and shut up. So where's the proof then, boss?
Well, I have
Big man.
I have actually found something.
All right, go on.
The US economy, from what I can find, is due to be worth $25 trillion, dollars even, in this year. And from what I can see, and this is the closest I can get to in comparable terms, the UK economy is worth $2.5 trillion.
Okay.
So I think that counts as multiple, doesn't it, James?
It's just money. Thank you, Theo. Many thanks indeed. He mentioned the British economy. I think we might be able. Are you ready for a Brexit phone-in, do you think? It's Mystery Hour next. Mystery Hour at 12. Mystery Hour at 12. But I can feel a Brexit phone-in creeping up behind me this week, increasingly. I don't know if you've seen the news that Britain will have the slowest growth in the developed world next year. And remember, those of us who are dismayed and disappointed by this news, we're the ones who hate our country, whereas those who are responsible for this news, they're the true patriots among us, the ones who have imposed upon the United Kingdom the economic sanctions which have seen the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development predict that we will have the slowest growth in the developed world next year. They're the patriots. The one that did it are the patriots. The ones that begged them not to, explained what they were doing and warned them about what would happen when reality smashed into their bigotry. We are the people who hate our country. So with that news there, Russia is predicted to do worse than us. Russia, of course, has had sanctions imposed upon it by other countries. The United Kingdom, Boris Johnson's Brexit Britain, has imposed sanctions on itself. And that is why they are the two countries out of 20 at the very bottom of that particular table. It is only a forecast and a prediction, and everybody, whether patriotic or arsonist masquerading as firefighter, which is my new way of describing so-called Brexiteers, we must all hope that the prediction doesn't come true and we do better than is suggested. Another story, the Vice-Chancellor of Cambridge University has warned that a failure to agree terms to remain part of the European Union's largest science funding scheme is already harming researchers. I think there might be a Brexit phone-in on the horizon, but not today, because we need to go back to the question of outlawing things. And Monica in Brighton has rung in. Poor Monica has been on hold for so long, you probably can't remember what you rang in to say.
No, don't worry, I've got it written down just in case.
Good Lord. If only Theo Osherwood would take such preparations, then we'd carry on.
Hi, yeah, so
Hello.
I'm calling about the harm reduction question and the question on plans to raise smoking age to 21 and that's going to continue. So I'm coming at this from the lens of young people, and I've got three kind of arguments to put forward. So firstly is education. So you mentioned how there would be in previous conversations, a big burden on think tanks to educate the populace. And when actually, again, coming at this from the lens of young people.
I didn't really. I was taking a mickey out of the fact that there's loads of think tanks dedicated to shilling for the tobacco industry, but there's none really secretly funded by anonymous billionaires dedicated to shilling for good health and transparency and clarity. So whose job would it be to balance out the education issue? And I'm going to run out of time, which is my fault. So despite your capacious notes, just talk to me about where you would draw the line between substances that should be prohibited and substances what shouldn't.
So I come at it from the angle of harm reduction. So I personally don't think that banning is the way to go. Right. Because when you ban, you increase the role of the black market, which is unsafe. Okay. And also because it's unsafe not only when you're picking up the substances, but also you don't know what you're getting. And also, instead of it being banned, I think there should be more testing facilities. There should be greater informed consent. That's the key principle behind harm reduction.
All of which is quite expensive.
What, informed consent?
No, testing facilities and education.
It is.
Well, informed consent is expensive, actually, because informing people is costly.
Time.
Yes.
It is, yes. But, for example, we've seen in Bristol recently, you have the Loop, and they are a Home Office-funded testing centre, and they are releasing some very, very interesting results about people. For example, they recently released that of what came through as potentially MDMA, or what people thought were MDMA, only like 50% of it was. So it's very clear that
I saw that. I didn't know. I don't know whether there was another story yesterday suggesting that quite a lot of what people were buying, young people were buying as ecstasy, contained absolutely no MDMA at all. Amazingly, it was explained as being one of the consequences of Brexit. But I don't like to bang on about Brexit, Monica, so I didn't mention that yesterday.
I mean, I feel like we can pretty much angle all things to do with Brexit now. I heard you just before I came on saying you got Brexit cool. I mean, that wasn't me.
That wasn't me. So, I mean, if everything was legal and education / information was exemplary, then so few people would do the really dangerous stuff that society would shoulder a much smaller burden and there would be much less harm.
Yes, but also it's more the fact that it's not that they would necessarily stop doing them, but rather they would know what they're taking.
Do them in a less harmful context, less harmful way.
In a less harmful context, exactly.
I like it.
And that therefore it's a much more human way of approaching it, I think, because we've seen that drugs have maintained, they've stayed, even when they've been illegal for a long time. We've seen that it's not working. And for me, this carries on the mantra of the war on drugs, and that this perspective, this way of approaching it, is a much more human way.
Well, and to illustrate the point, you can have a relatively wealthy heroin addict who manages to manage his habit despite the fact that he uses for years in a way that doesn't impact his health in anything like the same way that somebody reduced to scoring on the street and shooting up in a bus shelter is going to be impacted. So it is
absolutely. It is a question of class, definitely.
Of course it is.
And you've illustrated that perfectly, so thank you.
Well, so have you. What is your interest in this? Why are you so well informed, or better informed than me?
So I'm running the Benzo Research Project, which was set up as a student-led project set up in response to the growing usage of benzos recreationally in the UK, particularly amongst young people. Fantastic. For those who don't know what benzos are, Xanax, Valium, those are the typical brand names.
Right, you are.
And so they are legal. They are prescribed, but yet we are seeing such an emerging issue in like the underbelly, which is all of the non-prescribed usage. And we've seen, for example, how benzos are taken from, they're derived from medicinal sources, so they're legitimate, and then they are either compounded with a different element which is more...
Oh, so the perfect example then of transparency, clarity and information being the weapons with which we can fight against the harmful impacts of things that people, I think, given the nature of humanity, are probably going to do or dabble in to various degrees, regardless of what efforts are made to prohibit. Thank you. That was very helpful for me, Monica. It's coming up to 12 noon. So, I mean, if I've sounded ill-informed over the last hour, you wait until we get into the next hour, because Mystery Hour is now upon us, your weekly opportunity to achieve the sort of satisfaction not ordinarily available anywhere else on your radio dial. And do you know what? I've got the bit between my teeth today to such a degree that I think if it wasn't Thursday and we weren't now heading into Mystery Hour, I would throw caution to the wind and only go and do a bally Brexit phone-in. So you better tune in tomorrow as well.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Mystery Hour with James O'Brien.
4 minutes after 12 is the time. Hello. You are listening to Mystery Hour on LBC, your weekly opportunity to achieve the sort of satisfaction not ordinarily available anywhere on your radio dial. If you're new to this, it's really easy. It sounds a bit rubbish, to be honest, but it's not. It's so brilliant. It's even inspired a genuine board game, would you believe, of which more details later. Someone rings in with a question. We banter for a bit, for want of a better word, and then someone rings in with the answer, and we also banter for a bit. And we've got some comedy sound effects, including one that has been rendered quite poignant by recent events. I'll remind you of that in just a moment. And then off we go, all better informed than we were before. And I generally guarantee that between now and 1 o'clock, you'll have at least one moment of laughing out loud. Maybe not literally out loud, because, I don't know, you're not a big out loud laugher, or you're in an environment where you can't laugh out loud, but you would be laughing out loud if you weren't in an environment where you can't laugh out loud. Are you still with me at the back? Okay. And the lucky winner of a Mystery Hour board game is the one whose contribution to the programme I enjoy the most. It's a proper grown-up competition, so I have to now tell you that the terms and conditions, the full terms and conditions, I should say this in a really quick voice, shouldn't I? Full terms and conditions can be found at lbc.co.uk. But I don't have to, because this isn't an advert that someone's paid for, whereby you have to speak really quickly so that you pay less money for the airtime. I can just tell you that the full terms and conditions are available at lbc.co.uk. Who will be this week's lucky winner? 5 minutes after 12 is the time. Kate's in Borden. Kate, question or answer?
It's a question.
Carry on.
Okay, so the Old Bailey.
Oh, yes.
Right. Was the Bailey ever just the Bailey? Is there a new Bailey that makes the Old Bailey the Old Bailey? And how old did the Bailey have to be to become the Old Bailey?
That's actually a very good question. I think it's a street, isn't it? Because Big Ben's a bell rather than a clock. And I think Old Bailey is a street rather than a Bailey as in an old name for a car. I don't know. I don't know why I'm even... I mean, I'm just so old, but I haven't got... Yes, I know you do. I know you do. But that's why it's called the it's a motte and Bailey. It's like the motte is the thing. The Bailey is like a wall around a castle.
Right.
You're not impressed by my prep school history, are you, at all? I even did a project on this with felt tip pens and everything. I don't know.
Then you
all right.
should know.
Well, I think I did once. That's what I'm trying to tell you, but I don't really remember. Why is the Old Bailey called the Old Bailey?
Well, no. Was it ever the Bailey?
Well, you're only allowed one question. So is that what you want to know? Was there ever a Bailey? Was it once called the Bailey, and then at some point in the not too distant past they started calling it the Old Bailey?
Okay, well, let's just go for the old bit then.
Why is it the Old Bailey?
Yes.
Yeah, all right. I quite like that, actually. I mean, it's good. It's a good question. I shall try and find you an answer. Thank you very much, Kate. Why is the Old Bailey called the Old Bailey? The old bit is the bit in which we are interested. Thank you, Kate. 12:07 is the time. John's in Bristol. John, question or answer?
A question, James. How are you, mate?
I'm very well, John. How are you?
Oh, getting there.
That's my man.
I took the dog out for a walk the other morning.
Oh, yeah. Everything all right? Is it?
He's fine. Yeah,
Lovely.
He's all right. He's getting on a bit. But anyway,
Aren't we all?
He did his usual pile.
Oh.
Which I picked up with a little poo bag.
Yes.
And as that was going on, a lady went by on her horse.
Yes.
The horse did a monumental pile. And I said to her, hey, are you going to pick that up? And she said, well, no, we don't have to.
Yes.
You know, take some and put it round your roses. It's good for them. But why don't we have to pick up horse droppings?
Well,
we have to pick up dog's poo.
As is often the case with you, John, the answer is contained within your question. In fact, I'm going to do this one like Yoda. Contained within the question is your answer, John, because you just pointed out that you can put the horse manure around your roses.
Yeah.
It is not poisonous, whereas the dog poo is.
Well, but they're both biodegradable.
Well, no. Well, okay then.
They are totally both biodegradable. So
yeah, but dog poo's not good for.
Why can I be fined for not picking up my dog's dropping?
Because I'll come at it from another angle. Ready?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, I think it is a simple matter of good society, good behaviour, and you are highly unlikely to accidentally step in a monumental pile of dung.
Well, if you're walking past a monumental pile of dung and it's been raining and a lorry goes past, it goes all up your brand new Marks and Spencer chinos, doesn't it?
It may pollute your chinos, but then
you've got to try and wash them.
Yeah, but that's dog bites. That's man bites dog territory. That is such a concurrence of circumstances that society has taken a view that it does not happen and is not likely to happen often enough to necessitate legislation.
Well, I don't know about that, and I ain't even sure that it's good for the roses, because I took a couple of handfuls, took her advice, and I came in...
Handfuls? You carried it home in your hands?
And I had it in a spare poo bag for the dog.
Of course you did, yes.
And I brought it in,
yes.
I lifted the roses out of the vase on the kitchen, on the dining room table, I put it in the water, I put the roses in, and my missus went absolutely crackers with me.
You are a very silly man, but I like you. I'll try and find out what the origins of the legislation is for why there is no requirement to clean up after your horse in the United Kingdom as things stand, whereas with dog mess, the situation is rather different. John, thank you. Did you manage to get your chinos cleaned on that fateful occasion?
I've left it for my wife. I couldn't possibly touch him with all that. I was bad enough trying to get them off.
1970s, John. I mean, crikey, man. It's a division of domestic labour in this day and age. God, it reminds me, I haven't done a woke watch today. Thank you, John. Declan's in Bangor. Declan, question or answer?
Hi, James. It's a question, please.
Carry on.
You know when you look at maps from like the Middle Ages, 1700 and stuff, and they've got the UK, it looks like the UK.
Yeah.
How did they know what they looked like before there were planes and drones? Did they have someone who used to go around the corners of the country sort of working it out?
Yes.
They did. Okay, but whose job was it to do that? Did they have different people doing it, or was it just...
Well, hang on, you're only allowed one question.
Sorry, James.
No, that's all right. I mean, you would have... I mean, usually these kind of things were undertaken for the purposes of taxes. So you wanted to know where everybody was so that you could hit them for tax. I think that's really what lay behind the Doomsday Book, wasn't it, after William the Conqueror took over? But yeah, it's Sherlock Holmes, Declan, isn't it? Once you eliminate the impossible, whatever you are left with, however unlikely, must be however improbable, must be the answer. So yes, people would, either by land or by sea, they would basically draw the contours of the coastline, and that would tell you what a country looked like. I mean, for navigators, it's for navigators more than anything else, isn't it?
Right. Okay.
So in answer to who did it, it would be sailors, chiefly.
Sailors. Sailors used to go around the coast of all the UK.
Think how much a map was worth if you were going to try and invade another country, or you were going to be a privateer. Think how much a map was worth. I was reading, I think it was in one of Andrew Taylor's magnificent historical fictions, when there were fears in Scotland that Bonnie Prince Charlie was going to come back. The value of a map then for an invading army to show you how you got to the big towns or the big cities, which bits of coastline you could land on. The value of a map was incalculable in those days because it would all be hand-drawn, of course, before William Caxton's printing press came in.
Okay, interesting.
So it's not... I mean, I'll leave it on the board because I feel my answer lacks authority, Declan, doesn't it, is what you're too polite to say.
Qualifications, James?
Well, precisely, Declan, precisely. So I shall leave it on the board, but I think the answer is the one that I just gave. Where did the original maps come from, long before there was the technology that we enjoy today? Thank you, Declan. 12 minutes after 12 is the time. Why is the Old Bailey old? Why is there no requirement to clean up horse manure? And who drew maps before aerial overviews and the rest of it? Nigel's in Tunbridge. Nigel, question or answer?
Question, James.
Thanks
for taking it.
You're very welcome.
I've been reading little bits in the press about what's being referred to as a polar flip.
Right.
Because this happens apparently every few 100,000 years, and we haven't had one for too long, supposedly.
Right.
And it's saying things like this could render parts of the Earth uninhabitable, and it could be a very dangerous thing for us all. So I'm wondering, why would it be dangerous?
A polar flip?
Yeah, so effectively, as I understand it, north becomes south and south becomes north.
What? No, that's Brexit.
Well, I guess this is Brexit too. I'm sorry to use that word on the show at this
polar
time.
Flip?
Yeah.
I've missed this completely. What newspaper do you take?
Oh, I've seen it online.
Really? And what's going to? I'm not quizzing you. I'm just completely ignorant of this. Well, I am quizzing you, but not for mischievous reasons. What brings it about again?
Well, apparently it's something to do with the core of the Earth.
Oh, okay.
Rotating, and this is what apparently governs our polarity.
Oh, right.
And it's supposed to happen, I think they say, every sort of 200,000 to 300,000 years.
Gosh. And there could be one coming up soon.
Over 500,000.
And why would it be dangerous is what you want to know.
Yeah, they're saying it would render parts of the Earth uninhabitable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously more sophisticated than John O'Groats becoming the most southern part of the United Kingdom.
Well, you mentioned John, and I'm just thinking about the one we recently spoke to about horse manure, and you have perfectly mapped, to bring Declan into the conversation, you have perfectly mapped the gulf between the serious and the silly when it comes to questions that are acceptable on Mystery.
I just want to know whether we should be getting the heck out of this country, mate.
Well, it's not going to make much difference, is it? Where would you go to avoid a polar flip? You'd have to go to I nearly said
where
Poland.
would it be dangerous? I don't know.
The moon?
It's rather vague what's being said, but
it's a geomagnetic reversal. Apparently, I've just read. All right, you're on. I'll find out for you, and hopefully the news will be good. Although, who's going to be qualified to answer that, I do not know. 12:15 is the time.
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien.
12:18 is the time. Old Bailey, house, horse manure, maps and polar flips. It's all to play for. Sarah's in Warminster in Wiltshire. Sarah, question or answer?
It's a question, please.
Carry on.
Is there a scientific way of measuring pain? Like, the one where the doctor says, how much does it hurt on a scale of 1 to 10? Well, is there an actual scale that's scientifically measurable?
You mean objectively, don't you? Because there can't be. Because, you know, some people have got much lower pain thresholds than other people, haven't they?
Well, yeah, that's why.
That's what you mean. You don't mean, from no pain to very serious pain or hurts a little to hurts a whole lot. You mean...
Yeah.
Can you say he's registering 7 on the Sarah scale?
Yeah.
No. Well, think about the bath. Do you share your house with anyone? Do you mind me asking?
It stems from a conversation I was having with my 15-year-old in the car the other day.
Male or female?
Sorry?
Male or female?
Female.
Oh, okay. Are there any males in the house?
Yeah.
There are. Have you ever shared bath? Oh, this is all going a bit weird. Let me try and read. Have you ever noticed?
Now you come to think of it, yeah.
Have you ever noticed how women can have the water a lot hotter than the blokes?
Yeah.
So there you go.
Oh, okay.
So I could be wrong. I usually am when I think I'm right. I should write a book about that. But there can't be an objective measurement for pain because you and I would feel the same thing differently, wouldn't we?
Yes.
So
that's what I thought. But,
yeah, well, I'll put it. Well, I don't know. I'm going to have a round of applause because I'm feeling greedy. But I will leave the door open for stewards' inquiries or challenges. But I don't currently see how there can be any measure of pain intensity that would be transferable from one person to another. If you see what I mean.
Never learned about it in my career.
Well, that would be why. What was your career?
Veterinary nurse.
Oh, okay. Well, they wouldn't be able to tell you, would they? Your
Well,
patients.
there's other ways, but I won't go into that.
I'm intrigued now. Thank you, Sarah. I could be wrong, but I don't think there are like a Richter scale or measures of utility. Ben's in Greenwich. Ben, question or answer?
Hi, James.
Hello,
Question.
Ben. Carry on, mate.
I'd love to know why they're called stag and hen doos.
Oh, I knew this.
What's the origin?
I knew this once. It's come up before. No, it's not going to come. No, I got nothing. I mean, hens. Usually you would not have a group of chickens without a cockerel, would you?
True.
So it would be rare for an exclusively female group to be going around clucking. So that might explain why a hen night became a description of a man-free adventure, and then a stag is quite a kind of, I don't know, but I've got nothing, actually. I've got nothing on this one. What, have you got one coming up?
No, I was just out last weekend and was surrounded by about 10 hen doos.
Where were you?
Separate hen doos. And I was in Bath.
Oh, crikey. I didn't know that was a destination for...
No, neither did I. But yeah, I was surrounded by them, and it just came up. Where did it
come from? Well, I'm pretty sure that you might, Ben, have opened the door to somebody ringing in, providing an answer, being asked what their qualifications are, and they will offer up as their qualifications the fact that this has recently come up on the Mystery Hour board game that they have very wisely purchased from mysteryhour.co.uk. Because I'm pretty sure we've had it, and it seems to me the sort of question that would actually have made the cut for the game, but I shall try and find out for you in the meantime.
Thank you very much.
I apologise for not being able to remember. Thank you, Ben. Take care. It's hens and stags. Where does that come from? It is 12:22. I think for the first time in recorded memory, I've got everything written down correctly. I've got all the questions and all the questioners. Keith's in Worcester. Keith, question or answer?
I've got an answer for you, James.
Carry on.
Okay, the magnetic field question, the one about the magnets flipping from north to south.
Yeah.
Originally there was a study done on the plates that move apart in the Atlantic Ocean. And the study looked at the direction of the iron within the minerals of those plates. And what was found is that as the plates move apart, the iron forms in a certain direction depending on the poles in the centre. And you end up with this zebra-type pattern going out from the centre of the Atlantic, going towards each of the continents. And so that's how we first found out, that's how we knew about this idea of magnetic flipping.
Yes.
The magnetic flipping, we've got this ball of iron basically floating in a liquid in the centre of the planet.
Right.
And the idea behind it is that sometimes, because it's basically free-floating in a liquid, sometimes it can flip up the other way. Now, the question originally was, why is this dangerous to some areas of the Earth?
Yeah.
Now, my understanding of it is that it's dangerous because essentially you have this magnetic ball that is giving you a magnetic field around the planet that protects you from certain solar rays. And when it flips, this field is interrupted in certain areas and can cause some of those solar rays to come through and harm the planet. It's only temporary, but it can cause some areas to become uninhabitable
Which
for a short
areas?
period of time.
Which areas? Where should we steer clear of?
Well, if I knew that, then I'd be a better man than I currently am.
I think that was Nigel's real reason for ringing in. He was trying to sound all academic and clever, but I think he's looking to buy property in places that are going to be least affected by the polar flip. I think that was obviously what was on his mind. But so, and any thoughts on when it might happen? Tuesday?
I don't know, to be honest.
We're all right booking a holiday, though, Keith. We're all right booking a holiday.
Well, yeah, I mean, like you said, it happens every couple of 100,000 years, so we've got a fair way probably to go until the next one.
The way things are going at the moment, you can almost guarantee it's going to happen to us, isn't it? Probably while I'm on holiday. Can I ask how old you are? Do you mind?
Yeah, I'm 36.
How old are you? Not yet, no. So I thought you might be the youngest Keith we'd ever met, because my Keith is 34? No. How old are you? What? You're older than him. Yeah, that's what I mean. I was getting confused. So, you are the youngest Keith we've ever found. That's very young. So, listen, you may not know this. I don't know how much you listen to the programme, but we mentioned someone yesterday, a fictional Keith, and suggested they were 16, and I received a complaint saying that you're never going to meet a 16-year-old called Keith. It is a name that doesn't... I mean, it's quite rare to be a Keith in your 30s.
Yeah, well, I was named after my dad, so
that's nice.
I happened to be born on his birthday, so they named me after him.
Oh wow! Oh, that's lovely. No, I know you're not his dad. You're only 38 or something like that, aren't you? Well, that's lovely. No, and we've got a 36-year-old Keith. I'm going to keep a constant record of that. See if we can find you. Do you think you might be the youngest Keith in the country? Has anyone ever asked you this before?
I've not come across a younger Keith yet.
Nor
Plenty
have I.
of older Keith.
Loads of older
not
Keiths.
Many younger
Got older Keiths coming out of our ears, mate. But we need a young. So 36 is the current record for the Keith record. And if you don't mind me asking, I know you weren't expecting any of this nonsense when you rang in to tell us some very intelligent things about polar flipping. Whereabouts in Worcester are you?
I'm in Lowerwick.
Okay. Have we had this conversation before?
No, this is the first time I've spoken to you.
And I bet you're not going to ring in again after being bombarded with all these non sequiturs, are you?
To be fair, some of your political things, I've tried to phone in on those as well, but never quite got through.
No, you will do. Just be patient. I don't know Lowerwick very well. I thought I would. I know Worcester I grew up in Kidderminster, so I know Worcester pretty much. I thought like the back of my hand. But what are your qualifications for the polar flipping, Keith?
So I had a couple of years back in my 20s where I was at Cardiff University and I was studying earth sciences.
Beautifully done. Look at that. Thank you, Keith. It is 12:37. Tim's in Hull. Tim, 12:27. 12:27. Everybody relax. Good Lord, I always worry about what I might do when I get the time a bit wrong. Tim's in Hull. Tim, question or answer?
Hey, hi, mate. It's an answer.
Go on, then.
Okay, it's the poo. question.
Yes.
Well, my understanding is that it's a matter of omittance in law on one issue, and that's to do with the horses. Essentially the yielding, the type of defecation that's used. One's a herbivore, which is the horse. The other's, of course, a carnivore.
Yes.
They were deemed to be two obviously different types of.
Well, that's what I said. That's
bacteria.
what I thought.
Yeah. That's right.
So bacteria and nasty, it can do you a lot more harm, a dog poo, than a horse poo can't it? Generally speaking.
It does, but however, I had to check on this because of the nature of my job.
Right.
But the dog poo, there's no more requirement actually to find an actual dog fouling bin. You can just dispose of it. It's not classed as a biohazard anymore. You can just put your poo bags into normal sort of waste on street waste.
Yes, I've seen people do that. But you still have to clean it up, whereas there's no requirement to clean up after a horse.
That's right, it's bylaws, isn't it? So, but when it comes to the Road Traffic Act, there's no requirement for a horse rider to jump off and shovel the horse's poo up behind.
I mean, it would
on the
actually
highway.
cause more
it's
problems than it would solve, wouldn't it, really? That kind of, now you come to mention it.
Can I just thank you, James?
Well, it depends what for, Tim. I may be too modest to accept your thanks.
Well, I don't think so. I'd like to call you mate from now on as well, because if you remember, I'm the veteran that rang up. I just lost my job, and I told you about a few things, and we got nearly something ridiculous like 350,000 hits on YouTube with that, mate. But I'm just going to say, you made me really think deep about what have you. And what I didn't tell you was that I am actually, I told you I'd lost my job.
You did.
But I do suffer with depression and PTSD, and I've been really, really low. I've just gone on to Universal Credit first time in my life, and whatever. But I do want to say to you, thank you, because you made me think, and I've been listening to your programme nearly every day since, and I just wanted you to thank you and say, you really did make me think there, and you made me feel really better. So if you don't mind, I'll call you mate from now on.
Well, I'll call you mate too, Tim.
Yeah, but thank you for that. Anyway, that's the poo story, mate.
Thank you, mate. What's your qualifications?
I'm an assistant dog trainer now, and as you're aware, like I told you before, I'm a veteran. I was an arms explosive search dog handler in Northern Ireland for 5 years. I run my own department, and I trialled the first classification of vehicle search dog training in Northern Ireland. So a bit of a museum piece as well. So there they go.
That's pretty well qualified to answer this question.
Yeah.
Tim, mate,
Okay,
take care. Yeah, we'll talk again.
You take care.
Look
You
after yourself. You too. Round of applause for Tim, please. Oh, thank you. 12:30 is the time. Amelia Cox is here with your headlines.
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's 12:33. Why is the Old Bailey old? We've done the horses question. How did they do maps before, obviously technology and stuff? We've done the polar flip. Is there a pain scale, a scale of pain that everybody can subscribe to? So it would apply equally. You could say it's got 7, Sarahs or whatever it may be. And the origins of hens and stags in the context of pre-nuptial celebrations. I think that is pretty much it, isn't it? And I think we've probably got an early leader for who's getting the Mystery Hour board game this week. Dan's in Finchley. Dan, question or answer?
Hi, James. Answer. It's to your pain question.
Oh, yes.
Basically, long form, there are lots of different pain scales which we can use for different people. So for your adult population, you can use kind of a 0 to 10 kind of scale.
Yeah, but it's not objective, though, is it? If you do this...
No, it isn't. Well, pain, part of the definition of pain is what someone says it is.
Yes, exactly. You can't have two people reporting a 9 or not necessarily... Well, they haven't the same stimulus.
No, that's very true. I mean, look, if you were to be super scientific about...
Well, I usually am, Dan. You should know that by now. I usually am. In fact, I'm always super science. My middle name is super scientific.
Well, I mean, in the realm of kind of laboratory medicine and all that stuff, you can do what's called functional MRI and, look at the response of...
okay, yes.
Response of the brain in response to a stimulus, but as a broad brush to apply to everybody, it's very difficult, like you say, because it's very subjective what pain is. It's very difficult to pay with a broad brush, like you said, a Richter scale, a formal scale for everyone. Now, I mean, for adults, for example, as a very simple tool, we use a 0 to 10 scale. For paediatrics for babies, for example, you can look at the movement of their arms and legs and whether they cry.
Yeah,
or whether
because
they
there
grin.
might be different stimuli, but the actual level of pain is measurable and comparable. So I think I looked at it through the wrong end of the telescope, because I thought you could punch two people in the face and it would hurt one person more than it hurt the other person. But if you punch the second person harder, eventually they'd reach a point of 9 out of 10, that the first person, they may need to get hit harder to reach it, but but they're both going to be 9s on this scale. Does it have a name? Is there a name for it?
Well, there's essentially called a numeric rating scale.
Is that it? That's pretty boring. I'm not going to lie. I was hoping for something a bit sexier. Really the numeric. So really just numbers. It's called numbers, James. It's numbers.
So the simplest form is a 0 to 10, which is a numeric rating scale. And if you look at the big drug trials looking at the intervention of a new painkiller, they will essentially look at one arm of people who have just paracetamol, and then just the other arm who have paracetamol and the additional analgesic, and they will ask people to score on a scale of 0 to 10. And once you've factored in thousands of patients, everything would homogenize, and you could average these scores out and demonstrate in one arm of the intervention of the new painkiller, it's shown to reduce your pain scores by 2 or 3 points.
Got it.
And some of the biases of some people rating their pain slightly more severe than other people, but kind of melt away in the large numbers of a study.
Got it.
Now there are other scales for chronic pain, for example, and it asks you about how it impacts upon your.
Do any of them have fancy names? Sorry to sound so unsuper scientific for once.
No, it's absolutely fine. There are, off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you exactly what the name.
All right, don't worry. No, you've given us I think this is more than Sarah was expecting, or frankly deserved. In answer, what are your qualifications?
I'm an anaesthetist with an interest in pain medicine.
Well, you would. I mean, surely all anaesthetists have an interest in pain medicine, then.
They do.
Yeah. It's a little bit like saying I'm a footballer with an interest in goals.
No, absolutely true. But then there are anaesthetists who've got, for example, a special interest in chronic pain.
Oh, okay. I see. No, I get it. Anyway, you've earned a round of applause.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Lovely stuff. Lovely stuff. Thank you, Dan. I'll cross that one off as well. I hope Sarah is happy with that. Dave's in Shepherd's Bush. Dave, question or answer? Hello, Dave. How are you?
Do you know what, James? If you think ringing up for the first time is nervous, ringing up to answer one of these questions or pose a question, I think, is even worse.
You've never rung in before?
I've tried, never succeeded, and very, very rarely have an answer.
Well, here we are. This is it then. No pressure.
So it's going to be an answer for the Old Bailey one.
Yes.
So, as you said, a bailey was grounds outside fortification, and that would tie in with the walls of the City of London. So the grounds around the outside of the walls of the City of London were known as bailies. It was a ground around a fortification. The Old Bailey itself is the Central Criminal Court. It's not called the Old Bailey. Like you said earlier, the street that it's on is called the Old Bailey. The Central Criminal Court actually is a bit more interesting. That used to be Newgate Jail.
Yes.
Probably more people were sent from there to be hung in London than anywhere else in the country.
They would be, yeah.
So as the city expanded, in time, the Bailey, and as the city headed north, south, east and west, would have been referred to as the Old Bailey.
Because it used to be well, it's the wall, not the area, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, outside. So outside the wall. For example, Smithfields, that comes from the ancient smooth fields, because it was the flatlands north of the city.
Oh, I didn't know
so that. There's loads of interesting. What's more interesting about street names is if you go backwards and find out what they used to be called. I'm not going to name any.
No, don't name that one. I know which one you're thinking about. Let us say that there might have been a little alleyway somewhere where you could bump into a lady of the night, and it would be named accordingly, referencing perhaps a body part, for example. That's what you're thinking of, you dirty beggar, Dave.
Possibly, but there's many like that. But that's like I said, many people think the Old Bailey is the actual court itself, but it's not.
It's just the name of the street because it's where the Bailey used to be. Ergo, Old Bailey. As it were. Qualifications, I'm going to guess that you are either to be found on the top of an open-top bus with a microphone in your mitts, or you are a black cab driver.
I'm a black cab driver that sometimes likes to pass on little bits of knowledge, because reading and learning is not a bad thing to do.
But I can't say fairer than that. Round of applause for Dave.
Thank you very much, sir.
No, thank you, Dave.
Thank you very much.
Oh, great work, mate. Lovely stuff. 12:40 is the time. And you get things like Cut Purse Lane, which is a little bit more manageable, where all the pickpockets used to hang out and stuff like that. Nell is in Dublin. Nell, question or answer?
Hi, James.
Hello.
It's a question. By the way, I listened to you religiously from Dublin.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. I'm over next week, actually.
Great stuff. Love to meet you.
The Dorky Book Fair. Well, you never know your luck. Well, I never know my luck. I'm in Dorky for the book festival, which is always an extremely good weekend. I think it's next weekend. Anyway, question or answer now?
Okay, question is, and by the way, I must emphasize, it's not me asking the question. It's
Okay.
my nephew. And he's saying, how come the sun can burn in space, in a vacuum?
Well, there's no oxygen.
Yes.
How can it burn? What is burning? That's a very good question. I mean, it's probably not burning in the sense that we think it is it? Or I don't. Well, listen, I don't even know why I'm talking, Nell. I'm not going to lie to you. So let's find out. How old's your nephew?
6.
Flipping heck, he's a clever lad, isn't he?
And I feel like I should be able to answer the
Well,
question.
you will soon, and then you can go back to him and pretend that you just worked it out by looking at the sun or something like that. Ah, yes, lad.
I look forward to it.
Well, so do I. Thank you, Nell, and thank you for the kind words.
Cheers.
They are appreciated. 12:41 is the time. Yes, that Old Bailey one. It was Kate who asked it, Dave who answered it, Sarah asked about pain, and Dan answered it. Josh in Cannock. Josh, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on, mate.
So the year is 2022.
In the year 20... Yes.
And obviously it's that date because it's based around the life and death of Jesus Christ. But if you're not religious, or if you follow a different religion, why do we still agree that it's 2022?
Well, I mean, how nuts would it be if we didn't? I mean, it wasn't always like this. It didn't start with Jesus. I don't think the BC, AD, which doesn't even apply anymore. They call it the Common Era now, don't they, to keep Christians out of it. So I think it just spread so quickly and so far through missionaries and military adventures that there comes a point where you have to agree on... you have to have a regulatory framework, and the more people that subscribe to the same regulatory framework, the more easy life becomes for everybody, and I bet you didn't think I'd be able to bring Brexit into this. It's why electing to remove yourself from a regulatory framework in which all of your closest neighbours still exist is an act of absolute madness. So it's just consensus, I think. And there are still civilizations that don't. I bet North Korea, it's not 2022 in North Korea and a few other countries
exactly,
as well.
Yeah. So, is the parts of the world where people just completely disagree that it's 2022?
Yes, there are. I forget which, but there are. So, I mean, listen, I'm pretty sure that's right. I'll leave it on the board, but it will just be. And remember, we're in the West. We're in very much part of the Judeo-Christian tradition. So, it's no great mystery that every country in the Western world would subscribe to the same years. And then it wasn't long after adopting it that we all went off and invaded and conquered. Massively improved and enhanced the experiences of people living in the East, so that we probably took it with us. We took time and dates with us, regulatory frameworks. I'll leave it on the board in case there's a cleverer answer, Josh, but I think that covers it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Lovely stuff. 12:44 is the time. Dorothy is in Westwood Ho with an exclamation mark. Dorothy, question or answer?
We're special. We have that mark.
I know.
It is a question, please, James.
Yes.
It has to do with art and depicting the human form.
Okay.
And I kind of wondered why the ancients were able to create such beautifully proportioned sculptures.
Yes.
But it wasn't until the Renaissance that we could do the same. Sorry, I was running up the stairs.
Why? Just relax. Everything's fine.
Busy. That we weren't able to create the same with painting and drawing. But there's a certain part of human development that made sculpture easier then. And then we didn't catch up until the Renaissance with painting.
That's a brilliant question. I mean, in terms of culture and intellect, it's not up there with John's question about horse poo, but it is nonetheless a very, very erudite inquiry, Dorothy.
Well, unless they were drawings of horse poo, I don't know.
I'm thinking technology, bizarrely, but really, if you've got... because if you've got a pencil, some people can draw astonishingly detailed.
But they had paints back in ancient Egyptian.
No, I know. That's what I mean by thinking out loud and being stupid, because it's got nothing to do with that. I mean, you had hieroglyphs, as you point out, but equally, all you need is a stone on a stone, really. And now someone could get an essentially three-dimensional image with just a pencil and a piece of paper, couldn't they? So you should be able to do it on sand.
Well, and I know there are different mediums and different skills between sculpture and painting, but why did one develop so much earlier than the other?
That's an incredible question. I'll be amazed if we get an answer to it, but, we've got to have faith. We've got to have faith, Dorothy.
Okay, well,
let's find out. Why did it take so long after sculptures were, the very similitude of a sculpture is breathtaking, but until the Renaissance era, paintings looked a little bit like your 6-year-old nephew had done them. Not all of them, but you take the point. 0345 6060 973 is the answer that you need. 12:46 is the time.
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien.
It's 12:49. Andy's in Tunbridge. Andy, question or answer? I think I took Keith by surprise there by coming to the call. So is Andy gone? We're back to Andy shortly. Marcus is in Westminster. Marcus, question or answer?
Answer.
Carry on, Marcus.
Well, the question was, how can the sun be burning if there's no oxygen?
Indeed it was.
And, in fact, in the 19th century, people did think the sun was a giant lump of coal.
The fools.
But, of course, they couldn't figure out where the oxygen would come from. But when they calculated how long the sun would burn as a lump of coal, it was only 5,000 years. So not even enough for Archbishop Usher, who I think he thought the sun and the earth were born in, 4004 BC.
Yes, I think he's right. Is he not running for the Republican Party at the next election? Or is it in Northern Ireland? Sorry, carry on,
The Earth and the Sun are about 1 million times older, about 5,000 million years old. So that tells you that whatever is powering the Sun is an energy source about 1 million times more concentrated than coal.
Wow.
And in the 20th century, we discovered an energy source, and it's nuclear energy. So the Sun is fusing hydrogen, the lightest element, into helium, and the byproduct is sunlight.
And there it is. So there's so the hydrogen is necessary, but not heat, not oxygen.
Not oxygen. It's just about the most inefficient nuclear reaction you can imagine. So if you imagine
I'm not going to lie to you, Marcus. I can't really imagine any nuclear reaction.
If you imagine your stomach and a bit at the core of the sun, the same size and shape as your stomach is generating heat at a greater rate than the sun.
Blimey. Okay, now I understand exactly what you mean, which makes me intrigued to know what your qualifications are.
I'm a writer, but I was also a radio astronomer at Caltech in California.
You've been on Mystery Hour before, haven't you?
I have. I've been on it before.
Okay. And demonstrated your expertise previously.
Yeah, and it's because the sun uses this unbelievably inefficient nuclear reaction that it takes 10 billion years to burn its fuel, and there's been enough time for the evolution of complex life like you and me, James.
Fantastic. Well, like you, at least. Round of applause for Marcus.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. Beautifully done. Do you want to plug any books or anything like that?
My latest book is called Breakthrough, and it's published by Faber and Faber. So that would be wonderful.
Marcus Chown, who's too modest to tell you that, but I shall do it for him. Thank you, Marcus. Always a pleasure. Also worth following on Twitter as well. 12:52 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Anthony is in Blackpool.
Good afternoon, James.
Hello, Anthony. Question or answer?
As I understand it, the Renaissance question.
Yes.
As I understand it, the question revolves around what led to the increased accuracy of depictions in three-dimensional figurative painting.
I think that was it.
Renaissance.
I think that was it, yeah.
Pretty much so. The answer, resoundingly, is the advent of the camera obscura.
Why?
Because...
so for the flatness of it. It's the flatness of it as opposed to the sculpture, isn't it?
But before putting the brush on the canvas, they'd use a camera obscura, get the figures in front of the, this would all be behind a black screen. But then they would prick out the outline. Now, this is why, for example, and then they would paint it. But
they don't need to do that now. People have developed the faculty to do it without. Go on.
Because they've got the camera, that became outmoded. Yeah. But at that point, that was a historic leap.
So
in the history
prior
of art.
to that, the human brain was incapable of conceiving of a.
You've got it. Are you familiar with the painting, The Marriage Feast of the Arnolfini? There's a wonderfully elaborate light fitting above them, and that will be impossible to depict, or incredibly difficult to depict accurately because of the play of light on it.
Okay.
Well, one of the outcomes of this, James, is that you see in paintings of this period, up to say the Impressionistic period, from the early Renaissance period, you'll see characters holding glasses in their left hands.
You will.
An unusual majority.
Of course.
Because the camera obscura
has flipped it.
Has flipped it, yeah.
Well,
now,
I never.
Yeah, fascinating stuff.
What are your qualifications then?
My qualification, I've ripped this off David Hockney.
Have you?
There was a fascinating documentary, I don't know, it was 15 or 20 years ago, where David Hockney went through this. It was impossible to paint with the realism, which we are now familiar with, prior to this use of the technology. And then he's also produced a book, which I have glimpsed at.
Well, there you go. I mean, the powers of reading coming through thick and fast on Mystery Hour this week. Anthony,
quite fascinating,
isn't it? I'm going to find out more about it now. A round of applause for Anthony.
Cool.
Cool yourself. Back to Andy in Tunbridge. Andy, question or answer?
Afternoon, James.
Hello.
Answer to your question, also from Tunbridge, I think, on the early mapping.
Yes.
So you're right that prior to the Ordnance Survey, the only way really this could have been done would have been, as you say, through sailors going around the coastline and doing it best by eye. So after the Jacobean uprising of 1740 something or other, the government commissioned the.
It was the Jacobean uprising. It was that. So I was bang on the right period, or sort of.
Yeah, so obviously the Ordnance Survey is named after the fact that it was based around the military.
Ordnance being another word for weapons, or for...
Yes,
exactly.
So again, for the purposes of understanding how you would end up fighting wars, you needed to have good mapping. And so the Ordnance Survey came into existence in 1791. And the first thing that the Ordnance Survey were charged with doing was undertaking a much better mapping exercise of the country through triangles. And it is where they did something called the Principal Triangulation of Great Britain. And that was done using sort of the measurements of angles between all of these different triangles. And if you actually walk the countryside now, you'll still see what's called trigonometric stations. And they're dotted about all over the hillsides and throughout the country. Most of them are much more modern ones. Most of them were done as the second triangulation that was a much later exercise. But the first thing that had to be done in order to help with the facilitation of that triangulation was understanding the length of a baseline. And part of this is underpinned by something called the Hounslow baseline. And across Hounslow Common, they measured with the 100-foot, I think it was, metal chains, a section of that across the common.
Right.
And so
but you'd need to travel around a lot, wouldn't you, with your triangles, so to speak?
Yes.
Right, yes. But the triangulation would give you very, very accurate results as opposed to the naked eye and a pen.
Yeah, and by having stations that are near the coastline, obviously you can then get a really good approximation of the coastline, and the rest of it would have just been done by walking out and mapping it.
Have we done this before? You and me?
Not this question, but we've had similar questions.
Yeah, because I know what your qualifications are. It's a bit weird, this. I'm going to say, what are your qualifications? You're going to say, I did a degree in cartography.
Yeah, and I'd actually worked for the A to Z for 8 years as well.
Did you?
Yeah.
I should have a joke ready for that, shouldn't I?
Probably.
So, I mean, if you say I work for the A to Z, I should say, oh, well, in that case, you mustn't do. I've got nothing.
I didn't do the knowledge.
I'm losing my touch. If it was 10:58 and I was still bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I'd have come in with a gag there. But it's 12:58, and so I've got no. I used to work for the A to Z. No, nothing at all. Sorry, mate. How many rounds of applause have you won now over the years? Hounslow Heath, not Hounslow Common, just to be pedantic, isn't it?
Hounslow
Heath.
Oh yeah, you'd have to. Yeah, I haven't looked. Yeah,
it's my manor. It's my manor, Andy. It's my turf.
Cool.
It's my manner. How many rounds of applauses? Applauses? I sound like Gollum.
5.
What?
I think.
Good
5,
Lord.
maybe.
We should keep it. Do we have a league table? I can tell you who the youngest Keith who's ever phoned the programme is Keith. Thank you.
Cheers, James.
Hang on, a round of applause for you. That one was for me.
Yeah, love to the family.
Cheers, Ed. Love to the family. Thank you, Colin. Oh dear, I'm giving the box no surprises this week's free copy. This week's Mystery Hour board game, which is available at mysteryhour.co.uk.
Is there wine in that cup?
Goes to I guess happens on Thursdays occasionally. It goes to Tim in Hull with my compliments and my gratitude for some very, very moving words earlier in the programme, and I hope you have hours of fun with your Mystery Hour board game, Tim. I really do. Here's Sheila.
I know what you mean. I sometimes get a bit stammery in the last 10 minutes of the programme. It's like, no, I've run out of words, and now I just go.
Yes.
Well, fortunately, it's the beginning of the programme, so we're not there yet. Thank you, James. 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 We're not there yet. Thank you, James.